Lovely. So welcome, everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce Maria Roussou. She has been working for over 20 years at the intersection of interactive technologies, education, and culture. So please, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. Wonderful event. Congratulations. As a local, I'd like to welcome you to Athens for what it's worth, because it's the last day and you're probably preparing your departure. But in any case, it was great to have you here, and I hope that you enjoyed your stay here, and I hope that you have time to see some more of the city. Today, in my presentation, I have some examples of projects that include some of the sites of Athens, the archaeological sites and the museums. And today is a good day to go visit the Acropolis Museum tonight, if you haven't been to it, because it's open till 10 p.m. So it's right by the restaurant where we were yesterday, right by the Acropolis. So it's a good opportunity to go. And its restaurant is open till midnight. So try to go. So, when I was invited to give this talk, I thought that I selected some examples of projects that we have been carrying out for the last 10 years in the exploring mobile applications in the cultural context, both museums and open-air archaeological sites. And I thought that I would be focusing on the lens of social interaction with mobile devices in museums. So I proposed this title, The Mobile as a Probe for Collocated Sociality in Cultural Context. But when going through the examples, I realized that what in fact we're trying to do and what our goal is through these projects is to foster reflexivity, to foster this thoughtful interaction, this situation, this condition where the visitor thinks about their actions and reflects on what they are seeing, what they're doing within this cultural space. So I'm changing my title just slightly to Mobile as a Probe for Reflexivity in Cultural Contexts. And hopefully you'll see through the examples what I mean by that. The use of mobiles is not something new in museums, in cultural and recreational spaces. We all have probably used audio guides or multimedia guides in museums to engage in a guided tour. You may have also done the guided tour that was, I think, proposed by the conference. There's a great variety of devices, and nowadays it's more, we see mostly bring your own device type of applications where we download the guided tour on our own mobile device and go around the museum, mostly because archaeological sites are not so into this yet. But in any case, these are more object-focused guided tours. There have been some examples of more unconventional forms of the use of mobiles in the cultural context, with the introduction of storytelling, of various tangible devices or casings, with more, let's say, interactions, transmedia approaches, and so on. But these have been mostly in the context of projects that are research projects, and so they are not deployed for a longer period of time. In all cases, and in any case, the motivation when engaging in work with mobiles for culture is to enhance the visitor experience. In our case, what that means is to create more meaningful and meaning-making experiences. So all examples that I'd like to share with you today are naturally built around and enabled by the mobile device around this premise of creating meaningful and meaning-making experiences. All of these examples have been designed for real-world museums and archaeological sites, have been evaluated in the wild, and in some cases have been delivered to, not in all cases, unfortunately. We can't, for example, what I'll show at the Acropolis Museum, unfortunately, you cannot experience it there. They are now putting in place an audio guide and multimedia guide. That project did not actually get deployed. Now, just a few notes about the context, this in the wild cultural context. It has a highly situated nature. So the experiences take place in spaces, and the spaces matter. It's important to be there. And also the objects matter. For the most part, they are authentic. They have this aura of the authentic that people want to be near, want to experience, want to take selfies, arties as they're called, themselves next to the original. So there is a personal, a physical relation with the objects. And there's this in situ, this need to situate the interaction with the digital medium within the space and close to the objects. It's also embodied. The interaction is embodied. You move around. You go around, you have to navigate, wayfind, sometimes act, perform within these spaces, and experiences are dynamically constructed. And even though a lot of them are prescripted, of course, everything is almost prescripted in these cases, personalization, for example, is important in this case. And this is what motivated the first project that started basically this series of work that we have been doing in the last 10 years. So Steve Benford might as well come here and present with me. We collaborated on this project, the CHESS project that ran from 2011 to 2014. It was a European-funded research project. The Acropolis Museum was one of the partners. The Cité de l'Espace Science Center, Educational Center in Toulouse, France, was the other cultural partner, very different between them, with a very different target group audience. So the Cité de l'Espace, its primary visitor base is school children or families. The Acropolis Museum, of course, is one of the big museums of the world, so everybody from all parts of the world visited. So what we try to do here is to create a customized or personalized journey through the museum, like a guided tour, only not object focused, but narrative based. I'm not going to show you a lot about this project. You can look up the paper I will show you in a bit and read more about it. But the idea is that the individual visitors, so our idea, since this is a personalized digital storytelling experience, we focused on the individual. So the individual visitor we had personas, and the visitor we would identify or try to match the visitor with the persona that we had designed the experiences for. So there was a personalized experience and an adaptive one. As you went along, the experience would adapt to your needs, but also the form of the content would adapt, would be personalized. So we had, for example, the same story, but different media assets, different styles, and depending on the persona that you identified with the most. So an example of a story, this story, the stories had characters, had a plot, or at least that was the idea behind the design. And as I said, they were personalized to each individual visitor with recommendations given, like a recommender system, so that they could go along and have this experience within the museum space. So this excerpt is the main character of the plot is Theseus, a very known hero in ancient Athens, who was the one who fought the Minotaur. He went to, supposedly he's in the labyrinth, he has just killed the Minotaur, he's on his way out, and he's connecting with a visitor who's in the museum across time and space, virtual time and space, and the visitor has to collect superpowers from within the museum to send to Theseus so that Theseus can get out of the labyrinth and fight the King Minos soldiers who will be waiting for him to kill him outside.
Triton was not only a sea creature, but also a god and the messenger of the sea. Can you see the different colours on his scaly tail? Hercules is a fantastic hero who performed all sorts of feats because he was very brave and strong. Hercules was also good and noble, and the gods allowed him to live with them in their palace on Mount Olympus. So Hercules was the most famous hero in Athens. Until I came along, that is, and became even more famous. But hey, stop admiring Hercules, you're supposed to be helping me. So, what do you think? Should we take Hercules with us?
So this is an example of us trying to combine the description or information about the exhibit and trying to make the visitor observe it, look at the details of it, but also frame this within a larger plot that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, so that it has a more narrative focus, general narrative focus, rather than an object focus, as in the typical audio guides where you would put in a number or scan a code and listen to the description, but that's not framed within a general context, of a narrative context. There were also various activities within the experiences, depending on the persona. So for, let's say, this other story where the character was a woman who was a weaver, an Athenian, and she was speaking about her life.
How white she looks now. Once upon a time, though, her clothes were awash with color, decorated with beautiful designs. Would you like to see the colors as they were in my times? Lift up your device to see.
So this is a different style for a different visitor, a persona, where the character in the story, an ancient Athenian, is speaking about the statue, the sculpture, the Kori, the goddess, or whatever, and trying to make the visitor see the different parts of and details within the exhibits. Just a few screenshots so you can get a sense of the experiences that we designed. I'm not going to show you these videos because I'd like to move forward, but I will show you this. It's an excerpt from the evaluations we evaluated in the Acropolis Museum. Of course, in the Cité de l'Espace, we also carried out evaluations there, but I'm focusing on the Acropolis Museum since we're in Athens. So we evaluated with about 50 visitors, and here's kind of an excerpt from one of the evaluations so you can get a sense.
Hi, a horse and his friends are stuck in another time dimension. Will you help them find their way? Back to their time?
Sure.
Press here to start your chess experience.
Yes.
Hello, my friend. There's not much time, so I'm only going to say this once. You think you're in a museum, but you're not. This is to start with, there's 4 of us horses. Go look for us.
The main character is a horse.
Aren't we gorgeous? We come from a chariot, which is a horse-drawn carriage specially made for racing and warfare. Uh-oh.
Stand real still.
There's a monster here right behind you. No, don't turn around yet. Turn around really slowly. And no matter what you do, don't look her in the eye. She's the Medusa. You have to be very cunning when approaching this monster, or she'll turn you to stone if you look her straight in the eyes. That was her special power. There's an even scarier Medusa in the showcase behind the pillar.
So I hope you got a sense of what we were trying to do there with the stories, and framing the descriptions or the information about the exhibits in a general narrative, and with a lot of humor involved, depending always on the persona. Not all stories were as humorous because there are visitors who prefer a different style when visiting the museum. So we learned a lot, of course, through this project. Some of the lessons learned that I've picked out to focus on today. In terms of form, working between the analog and the digital and taking the narrative beyond the screen, because the screen is very dominant, is something that we saw very much so during the evaluations. So the screen is very dominant, and despite our attempts to have the visitors focus on the exhibits and the details of them, it still dominated the experience very much so. In terms of storytelling, we saw that enhancing the emotional engagement is something that we want to explore more and go forward with, because the humorous parts and the parts that related to everyday life as it is today were the ones that were the most successful and the most valued and appreciated by the visitors. And in terms of interaction, of course, museum professionals say this all the time, people do not visit museums alone. Very rarely do they, or even if they do seek this emotion, this social dimension. So you can read all about the results of the evaluation at the Acropolis Museum in this paper, and I'll show you the other papers later on that relate to the Cité de l'Espace as well. So looking at these three, let's say, points in terms of the lessons learned, taking narrative beyond the screen, this is what we want to get to. This is what we wanted to get to. See, the tablet is on the side and they're looking at the exhibit. So it's supporting but not dominating. And this kind of engagement, removing the mobile device or the technology out of focus is really what we want to get to. So we thought that through storytelling and through emotional storytelling, emotive storytelling, and through creating what we call historical empathy, we're using this model by Endicott and Brooks, that we can achieve this kind of engagement and reflection with the past and resonating with the past. So historical empathy, according to the model, has these three aspects to it, these three tenets. Historical contextualization is one, and that's the basic learning of historical facts. You can get that from the labels and the books and even the traditional conventional audio guides. There's perspective taking, which has to do with the understanding of the views of the people of the past. And there's the affective connection, which is to prompt visitors to understand past people as individuals with their own emotions, values, and worldview. So we obviously want to focus on the latter two, because obviously historical facts can be obtained with other means. In terms of the social dimension, we had in our evaluations people who came to, these are two friends, two 10-year-olds. They wanted to, and we of course did not prevent them from, experience the museum together, and also parents with their children. Although we had designed for an individual experience, We had to, in the end, support this collaboration, this social experience by using these Y splitters to, they had one device, but they had 2 sets of headphones so they can both listen to the content, but one was the one who was operating, basically, or touching the buttons. So this is one of the lessons learned. We thought, okay, in our next project, we will definitely design for groups. We will take this into account. Thus, the original title of my talk on focusing on collocated sociality, but it's a bit more than that in the end. So yes, shared collaborative experiences have these different dynamics: families with children, friends, couples, tourist groups. Interaction among members of a group is seen to enhance an experience. The 2 papers I mentioned, and this is where at the Cité de l'Espace, where the group from the University of Nottingham really observed all these different types of sociality and group dynamics of working together to solving issues, of parents overseeing what their kids are doing and supporting it, but maybe not themselves having an experience that was meaningful, and all of these different configurations that one has to account, and that's what we wanted to do in subsequent projects. Now, a seminal, I just wanted to put this in here. I have not worked on this, but Sotto Voce was an electronic guidebook 20 or so years ago that explored this group interaction and this conversational role that mobile guidebooks can have with visitors in museums. So next steps then. Design focus on these 3 pillars of form, working between the analog and the digital, enhancing the emotive perspective of an experience, and supporting groups, people visiting together, which led us to a follow-up project called Emotive. This was also funded by the European Commission. We had different sites here, different partners, and different cultural sites. And I will show you a few examples. We did a lot of things in Emotive with a lot of different technology. So mobiles were used, but also immersive virtual reality and other projects, sub-projects. I will focus on the ones that have the mobile as the center of the support of the experience at large. So the Ancient Agora of Athens, that's another site that if you do have some time, maybe today, but I'm not sure what time it closes. This is an open air archaeological site. You can see some of it in these images here in the back. So we've designed a few experiences for this site. Trying to focus on on historical empathy, on inducing, on fostering historical empathy, and especially perspective taking and the affective connection. So one of the experiences is called Hermias. I forget the life of Hermias. Hermias is a slave. Slaves were, it doesn't sound good to say slave today, but in ancient Athens, they were part of the household, of each household. So they were not free citizens, of course, but they were valued by the households for the most part that they lived in, and they did all of the work. So the agora was the mall of Athens at the time. That's where people would go to buy their food, fish, vegetables, etc. And of course, the Athenians would also go, the citizens would also go to meet and to the court, and everything was there. It was the center of the city. Now, this story is an interactive narrative, so it's a branching narrative. So depending on the choices that you may get a different ending. There are about 7 or 8 different endings designed in this story. And you, as a visitor, you are kind of the alter ego of Hermias, of the main character. So he speaks and you make the choices for him. So he starts out, for example, he's going to go to the Agora to shop for the dinner. They have at home, and he's trying to think whether he should take his talisman with him or not. It's it's something that he has since he was born. And so, for example,
What do you decide to do? You carry the talisman with you. This is your charm. You feel like it can help you. You leave it behind. You feel like something could happen and you might lose it.
so there are all kinds of questions and dilemmas that maybe guide the rest of the story, and within this, and dialogues between Hermias and his master and other characters within the story. But a lot of the questions have to do with deeper kind of dilemmas that we tried, at least, to relate to dilemmas that people may have today. So
What do you decide to do?
Sorry, that was...
You carry the talisman with you.
Okay. So, for example, there are, it's a branching narrative, like I said, so there are different decisions that you have to make through.
What are you up to? What are you considering straight away? Or would you rather want...
Okay. I'm going a little quickly, so sorry for bombarding you with these different examples. This is another one at the Ancient Agora, this time in the museum, and this is an example of perspective taking. I have brought this. So, the visitor or the visitors wear it. Now, these experiences are not designed for groups yet, but in all cases, when we evaluated them, we had usually pairs, couples, and visitors that, with the headphones and the wide splitter, would have one device and they listen to the same content. So this is a very playful type of experience. You get one of these. Each side has an emotion on it: anger, sadness, joy, fear, jealousy, admiration, and indifference. There are NFC tags behind each side. So essentially, you have your mobile phone, and you touch on one emotion in front of a glass case, an exhibit within the museum, and you listen to a character, somebody, saying something using this emotion. So you have different characters in the story who speak about a specific topic with that emotion. So there are multiple perspectives or multiple emotions on the same theme, on the same topic. For example, this glass case here has to do with Socrates. Everybody knows Socrates. For the most part, people consider Socrates as a philosopher with admiration, today's people. But Socrates was human, and as all of us, he had people who loved him, who hated him, who were indifferent, who had different views of him. So all these different perspectives are the ones that we wanted to foreground in this type of experience. So I'll show you a video. It's a little early, so the experience has advanced since. It was when we did our first formative evaluations, but you'll get an idea of how it works. And we tried to have very little on the screen. This was an audio dominant experience. So this is the museum in the Ancient Agora. It's a very traditional museum in the sense that
a display case related to Socrates and Simon the Shoemaker.
Unlock an emotion.
Despicable, impetuous, godless. This is what Socrates has always been, always thinking about no one but himself. Well, he was executed, it's true, but he was asking for it. And it goes on a little bit. Who do you think that this was? His wife. He hated him, and it's very well known to the archaeologists at least.
Socrates was second to none. There will never be anyone like him. First of all, he was an excellent conversation partner. He always had something unexpected to tell you. He always managed to lead the conversation on the brightest paths.
And so on. So you can choose to hear all of them, one of them, however many you want. And in the end, we also had a little quiz, like which emotion did you prefer? It was impressive during our evaluation, especially with the younger ones. Or which emotion do you have towards Socrates? And it was impressive to, we actually got a 14-year-old girl who came out of this experience angry because she was angry at Socrates' wife for being angry at him. And how dare her? So we got exactly what we were looking for. We wanted people to engage emotionally with the content, and especially the target group of teenagers, which is the most difficult to engage with. So this experience, we are hoping, because we started evaluating it right before the pandemic, and then we couldn't do a further evaluation, but we have almost completed it now. So we are hoping that this will be available at the museum, at the Ancient Agora. Now let's go to another site that was part of our emotive project. This is a very different site, Çatalhöyük in Turkey, modern day Turkey. It's an UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's Neolithic, 9,000-year-old, and it's in a very remote part of Turkey. It has been excavated by an international team for many, many years now. It is thought by the archaeologists to be occupied by many thousands of people for a long time. And the interesting points in this site is that it had an egalitarian socioeconomic organization. There was no boss, there was no chief of clan. Everybody was equal, and they shared their homes, their objects, even their children. That's what the archaeologists say. So, and the neighborhoods were streetless, and we wanted to reflect a bit on these very particular ways of life and see what it means to be in an egalitarian society. It's something very unknown to us today. And how can we relate to that? And what do we think? So we developed a series of experiences about Çatalhöyük at Çatalhöyük. You can see here they have some reconstructed, physical reconstructions of some of the homes. Once you get there, you can go in these homes and see or understand how these houses were, because if they didn't have that, the only thing visitors will see when they go to this site is this. You see, it's the excavation. So you don't really understand a lot about it. You just see some dirt and rocks, and to go there, it's very far and hard to get there. So it may be a bit disappointing for visitors. So we developed this, one of the experiences that we designed was a mobile application that is designed to be used by more than one. It has to be used by more than one, because what they do is they exchange objects using their devices, and they have this collective decision-making process that they use. So each person has, each visitor has their own device, and there are parts in this experience where they have to bring together their devices in order to proceed and to finish the task. So just a few screenshots very quickly. Another experience designed for the Çatalhöyük site is a chatbot where you engage in a dialogue, and this is a provocative chatbot. It asks you questions. You don't ask it questions, which is the typical model of a conversational service type of chatbot is, when is the museum, the Acropolis Museum open? What are its hours? Blah, blah, blah. This one asks you questions, and it asks you questions that relate to the site. At Çatalhöyük, they buried their dead under the floor of their houses. So there have been houses where they found even 16 bodies, remains under the floor. So the chatbot says, would you bury someone you care about under your bed? And you can, this is a rules-based chatbot. It's not very smart. So if you answer something like yes, then it will say, oh, well, you're just like a real Çatalhöyük. Would you ever open the grave again after you've buried them under your bed? Or if you say no, like, oh, yikes, hell no, that's creepy. Why not? Are you afraid? So it engages you in this series of reflections, we hope. And in the process, it also gives you a glimpse of how they lived and what they did and what their thinking was and their daily life was. So the people of Çatalhöyük also sometimes bury their dead with things like rings, beads, containers. Do you do this with dead people? And you start talking about your own experiences, your cultural, personal experiences. So it's a conversational partner that has its own opinion, and it tries to make you relate to it or understand, and through that process, learn about how they lived in the past. So let's see. We remember the past through personal and material connections. The legacy you'll leave behind will affect others for the better, I hope. Let's think more about Çatalhöyük's legacy and so on. So let's go to another, again, part of emotive, to another archaeological site plus museum, also an UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is in Scotland, Antonine Wall. It's the northernmost frontier of the Roman Empire. Again, visitors who go to visit it will see, have you been? You were in Scotland. Basically nothing. They'll see some remains, and it's very green there, and basically nothing. What you can see is only housed in the Hunterian Museum at the University of Glasgow. It's the display of the Antonine Wall, which basically consists of tombstones for the most part, but also some objects that were found at the forts of the wall where the Roman soldiers lived and where they had created families with the locals, although that was not allowed. So of course they were there for a very long time. So in the end they had integrated somehow with the local communities, even though Mother Rome did not allow that. And we get to this experience exactly at the point where Rome has asked its soldiers to go back home after many years. Ebucius is one of these soldiers. We know that because an object was found, this hammerhead inscribed, the name Ebucius is inscribed there, and the archaeologists think that he was a centurion, and his name was there scratched on one of the hammerheads. And so the experience features Ebucius as the main character. And he has a dilemma. Should he go back home or, well, to Rome, because he's a soldier and he has this sense of responsibility, but leave his family that he has made in the meantime there, or should he desert the military and stay home with his family. So I'll put a little bit, a snippet so you can.
I'm Abutius. I was a soldier with the Roman army at the Antonine Wall. Around you in the museum are some of the things we left behind. From them, experts decipher where we lived, the food we ate, the clothes we wore. They can tell you what we worked at, how we relaxed, the way we fought, but they can't tell you about my feelings. They don't know what I dreamt about or who I loved, what made my pulse quicken or my heart sing, and no one knows my own personal stories. But you can discover some of these here. You can rescue me from obscurity and reveal my stories. You can make me live again.
It's a little dramatic, okay, but it has also some more some activities. So you can find the hammerhead. So you are kind of guided to go there, and you can. There's a augmented reality involved, but for the main part, it's a story. It's a branching narrative that has three axes: Boutius's working life, his personal life, and his sense of honor and duty. So these main strands, you can pick which ones you want to follow, which one or which ones. And there's a lot of narrative in there. There's a story, there's a plot, how Boutius met his wife, and all these kinds of other conversations that are going on. There are some visual elements in this process, but for the most part, you read what you hear, and then you have choices that you make. So tomorrow the Roman army will leave to go south, abandoning the Antonine Wall. Should I go with them or stay with my family? Make your choice on the next screen. And this is the main part of this experience. It's the dilemma. Boutius should follow the Roman army when they abandon the wall. That's one option that you have as a visitor, or the other is he should desert the Roman army and stay with Calle and Callum, his wife and his son, and you make that choice. And this is something that you can relate to today. I mean, this is a choice that many of us may have, or it may occur in one's life. So what do we understand here? We understand this is our attempt to induce historical empathy, to create this affective connection with the people of the past, their values, and understand that we're not very different, perhaps, or even if we are, these differences are also visible today. Everything that we design is done with the archaeologists and the professionals involved, the domain experts. So there are facts behind all of these stories, and many times visitors want to know what is real and what is not, what is fiction and what is fact. So in this, we didn't have that in the chess project, but this is one of the lessons learned that people want to know. Is this real? Did it really happen? Did they really do this? Did they really have were there really women and children at the wall, for example? So we designed this into this experience, and this was quite appreciated. And we also gave them the opportunity to leave their choice, share their choice, the dilemma on Twitter. So we kind of try to get some stats about what most people have voted to do or not. So let's go on to another project at the Hunterian Museum, again, about the Antonine Wall. This time, the main character is a slave, Verecunda. She's working for the Roman general at one of the forts, and she disappears. That's the story. And this is a multi-part interactive storytelling experience that this is maximalistic. There's VR, there's the mobile, AR, storytelling, 3D printed artifacts like the casing where the device is around, and the highlight for what, in terms of the design of trying to get to the reflective part, the reflexivity, which is the group dialogue session. So we try to put everything in this particular experience. So it starts off with a group of visitors, 4 in particular. They wear these headsets in the museum, as you can see in the Hunterian, near the display of the Antonine Wall, and they are introduced to the scenario, to the story that Verecunda has disappeared, and along with her, a ring, the ring of the general, an expensive ring, has disappeared too. So did she steal it? What happened to her? There are all these questions that need to be answered. So each visitor chooses a character and has a mobile device that has that character basically guiding them through the story and relaying their perspective, the character's perspective, about what happened to Verecunda in the ring. So there are different characters. For example, another slave who was Verecunda's friend, or the daughter of the Roman general who was at the same age as Verecunda, Verecunda's father, and so on. So visitors go around the same exhibit, the same hall, the same gallery, but they see the exhibits, or different kinds of exhibits, that relate to the character that they are going around with, that is guiding them through this storytelling experience. And you can see the casing is actually a specific exhibit. It was a broken window, and they can see it there, but it also inspired the casing of the mobile device, so it puts them into context. And there are some AR activities where they scan objects, they read about them, and these objects are integrated in the story. So I'll show you a little video. In the end, you have to return your magic window before it breaks completely and it loses power. And once you do that, all visitors, without any technology now, come together, all 4 of them, and they have this shared with the museum educator, or the operator, or the facilitator, so 5 people, and they engage in this shared dialogue and reflection about what they think. Of course, depending on the character that they had, well, what does each one think? What happened to Verecunda, and so on. So I'll show you a little video so you can get an idea of the whole process. I mistakenly have the same slides that I went through here, so I'll just go really past them. And conclude my talk by highlight what we believe one needs to account for when designing applications that can serve as probes for understanding and promoting not just sociality, but primarily reflexivity and historical empathy in terms of perspective taking and affective connections, but also and learning about the facts, the historical contextualization, but in a way that comes, say, underground in these diverse, very diverse cultural settings. Being meaningful in terms of its interaction, supporting sociality and sharing, reflection and dialogue, especially the dialogue part, which we explored more in this last example I showed. Historical empathy with its three axes, the different perspectives, through the narrative, how we shape the narratives, and ultimately what we want to do is to relate and resonate to those that we design for. So with that, thank you, and I'll take questions.
That was really exciting. Thank you. It's obvious that you have tried all these different means of technological enhancements of visitor experience, right? Screen, audio, everything. In the end, okay, let's say that we call you for your next museum project. How do you decide? How do you propose which path to follow? As you very well said, screens. Okay, we know they offer, yes, but they are dominant. Okay, and there are several studies actually proving that. It distracts. Okay, I can see things that I cannot see otherwise, but it distracts attention, and at some points, if you're not really careful, you lose the whole point of experiencing with the real artifacts and the real environment. Right. Can we achieve similar levels of immersion and similar levels of learning outcomes without it? With plain sound, maybe? Old school or narrative-enhanced guides, sound guides? Do we need the screen in the end of the day?
It depends. I mean, there's no answer. What happens with these experiences is that they're very bespoke, they're very custom. So it depends on what you want to say, what the message is, and where you're at, what the context is. And you cannot automate the process of designing. You have to design for that particular context with the people, participatory design. That will be the end users, but more importantly, to go back to what Cosmin said in his talk, with the professionals, the domain experts, let's say, the mid-level users that are involved. So you have to design this depending on what you want to do and where it is. I mean, we tried all these different approaches, and each one was effective for different reasons, and not effective for different reasons as well. For example, in the emotion speaking experience, there were no visuals. Basically, the only thing you saw was the color of the emotion that you chose and the word, anger, jealousy, whatever. There was no need for it. The audio was enough, and it was very powerful. The same with the slave around the agora, Hermias. There were no visuals, so the audio was powerful and it was enough. Now, in the case of the last example, we used VR. Okay, this is my field of research, virtual reality. It's very, the image is the visuals are very dominant there. We wanted to see whether that's a better way to engage, and it may be needed in some cases to set the scene, to use it as a scenario, but only at the beginning and only as a teaser for what will come, to immerse you into the story, not throughout. So it depends. We have other experiences that I didn't show here that are fully virtual. And that is also needed because you can't go to Çatalhöyük. It's very hard to get there. They're not accessible sites. You want to be inclusive. So there, you can't just work with audio. The chatbot is a text-based medium. It doesn't have audio at all, right? So
But do you have any case where you actually compared on the same site different means?
Yes, we didn't do studies comparing though. We didn't compare with different means and see which one was more effective because each project was designed for a different purpose. So it's very hard to sustain though and scale up these types of experiences. And that is one of the challenges and the tensions and the difficulties when designing for this particular context, a cultural context.
Yeah, so I'll follow up with a question from one of our hybrid attendees. This is from Maristella Matera, and she asks, on a meta level, have you focused on museum professionals, for example, authoring tools, and to help them adapt to these wonderful applications and keep them alive after your part of the project is over?
Yeah. Well, the chess project that we worked on had these both target groups, both of these target groups, the authors, the creators, and the visitors, the end visitors. So there we had authoring tools, and the same with the emotive project. We changed these authoring tools in the emotive project and made them much more accessible for the target group of museum professionals because they are not technologically savvy for the most part, or they don't have the time to invest in creating these. There's a lot of effort involved in these types of experiences. So we have a result, a deliverable from the emotive project is this open access, free web-based authoring tool. You can't author the VR experiences with it. You can author narrative, mobile-based stories. And we try to engage, and we have engaged many such professionals in that process. So we're very interested in that target group because smaller museums cannot afford creating such experiences with professional companies, content creators. So they have to do it on their own. Cosmin has raised his hand from before.
Thank you very much for this. I'm fascinated by all this work as someone who also does VR with storytelling as a separate field of research. And one of the challenges, and maybe a bit more technical, that you can help us here, it's thinking about the evaluation part. And I almost hate myself for saying evaluation because it's such a bad word in many ways.
Yes.
But reflecting on the 14-year-old girl who was angry at Socrates' wife, how do you disentangle the emotions that are, or the reaction and the experience that caused by the medium itself versus the affordances of the applications you have built with the medium versus the actual story behind, in this case, just knowing about, she could have read about it in a book,
Great
right?
question.
And had the same reaction. So how do you disentangle all of this? And maybe we don't need to disentangle. Maybe this medium facilitated getting to that. But
well,
how do we do this?
We had exactly that concern and that question. So we actually designed the study, the evaluation that I was referring to, with the girls and so on, was a comparative study. So we had one condition was this, the one you saw and I showed. The other condition was the mobile device without the playful element of the tangible. Basically, you just pressed the button and chose the emotion and you heard it. So no playful interaction there. And the third condition was the stories, the descriptions, the characters in a book. So it was a color code. It's a color code. It had tabs with the emotions. And I didn't think of bringing that. I have it, a laminated book that they don't have mobile, nothing. They don't know about it. So we had a between groups approach and study. And they used the book and they got to, we tried to balance them. So they didn't get to choose which of the three conditions they would take part in. So they got the book and they just turned in front of the glass case, they just turned to the character they wanted to read about. Our hypothesis was that this would be the most engaging well, it's inconclusive because all of them were engaging. And essentially, the content is king or queen is really confirmed in this kind of case. The people who had the book, which we thought would be the most boring of the three, loved it. So we were unable to tell whether this added anything to the experience or this even more to the experience. They loved the stories, they loved the approach. They asked if they could keep the book, all of these things. So, and there was an element of tangibility in that, of course, but there was no technology involved. So I don't have an answer to that question. And we haven't published this project exactly because we don't know exactly what to say. I mean, what should we say? Oh, that the content, if it's well designed and if the stories are powerful, then you don't, need any technology. I don't know. Should we say that? I don't know. So.
All right, thank you so much, Maria. We are out of time for questions, but you'll be here today to have more chats, and there's obviously the Discord as well. So thank you again, Maria.
Thank you.